4 years ago, I made a video that was supposed to be the start of a series. Today, I remake that video and bring my dead channel back. That video had a goal in mind, but no planning ahead of time, was immediately derailed, and had some weird choices for the editing, mostly weird cutting between live commentary and then some stuff recorded after the fact, with no real rhyme or reason, which completely messed up the pacing of the video. With that out of the way, let's talk about the suicide of Rachel Foster. This is the first video I'm going to release after almost 2 years, and with it releasing fairly close to the 4-year anniversary of the beginning and end of the Doesn't Make Sense series, and by extension, the original Suicide of Rachel Foster video, I feel like I need to give some context for this game. Our tale begins sometime during COVID when I heard of a game called The Suicide of Rachel Foster. I don't remember how. I can only assume it was the Steam Discovery Queue because I've never seen or heard anyone talk about this game other than me. The thing that made me immediately interested in the game is some, let's say, weird language about some of the characters. The very, very basic backstory to the game is the player's father was having an affair with a child, making him a pedophile, and this led to the breakup of the family and the girl, who is the titular Rachel, taking her own life. Now, an important thing to note, I didn't use the word affair because I wanted to. That is literally the wording used on the Steam page for the game. And you'll notice as this video goes on, that isn't a one-time thing. But that isn't what made me interested. It was actually the top review at the time, which I'll never be able to find since it has been about 4 years and could have been hidden, which said something along the lines of, "This game defends pedophilia by making it seem innocent." Which then led into the question I had for the original video: does the suicide of Rachel Foster treat pedophilia as harmless, or is there a lot more to it than perhaps people were making it seem? Is the game about a pedophile being painted as a perfect human who only cheated on his wife? Or is it about a pedophile being an evil person, and it is only shown maybe as a background story due to the biases among the characters? The goal of this video is not to attack the creators of the game. It seems like Rachel Foster was one of the first games with an actual plot made by 101 Games, who seemingly were mostly a mobile game developer beforehand, from what I could tell. But instead to see how the story is presented and how the characters react to both the affair and the suicide, as well as looking at the weird red herrings in the story, which from what I can recall there were a few of. Enough with the rambling, it is now time to play The Suicide of Rachel Foster one more time to definitively ask if the game makes any sense at all. Before the gameplay begins, we are greeted by a loading screen showing a retainer. That definitely won't be an important thing later on. The game opens with our protagonist, Nicole Wilson, reading a letter from her dead mother who has never given a name other than the last name Wilson. The letter is mostly just a goodbye to her daughter with a reference to an unnamed illness, I'm assuming something like cancer. Every few pages of the letter we get to walk through the funeral where Nicole's umbrella just clips through a bunch of others. This is the only comment I have about the funeral. Back to the letter. Less than 60 seconds into my recording and we have the first mention of the affair with a young woman. The young woman, as is stated later on, is around 16. There are some references to her being around the same age as Nicole, and I distinctly remember Rachel being referred to as a 16-year-old. At the very least, she's under 18. Nicole's father, Leonard, being completely generous, at least is 32. But there are some things that imply him to be much older at the time, so anywhere from mid-40s to 50s. This is not an affair. This is pedophilia. But trust me, it gets worse. Interestingly, this letter is also one of the few times where Leonard is blamed, not the girl, stating that he betrayed the trust of Nicole and Ms. Wilson, before immediately implying she's glad that Rachel killed herself. Do you see why I had a pretty long intro? I need to scare off the people who may find this unsettling, because this game is just really fucked at times. Now for something I missed while playing. Nicole hates abortion. From the same page as my previous comment, there is a subtitle at the bottom, no idea why it's there and not written on the paper, saying that Nicole marched against abortion while in college. I did not see that line at the bottom of the screen while playing, and I actually thought Nicole was a well-written, actually decent person. Can't wait for me to continue reviewing my footage and see a line about Nicole going on a murder spree for fun. Ms. Wilson entrusts Nicole with selling the family hotel, which, time for the third tangent in 3 pages. In the hotel, there are paintings and photos depicting the McGraths, which is Leonard's family. Ms. Wilson claims that the hotel is her family's. Did Leonard just put up a bunch of stuff from his family in his wife's hotel? Or has Ms. Wilson just decided it was hers? Anyway, Nicole needs to go look at the hotel, make sure that it can be sold, take some of the money to pay off her university loans, and give the rest to the Fosters, for reasons. A lawyer has already been hired to manage the sale, and this letter was set up 2 years prior, with it being given to Nicole following the death of Leonard, who was living in the hotel despite it shutting down long ago, which does not answer any of my questions. In December 1993, there is a snowstorm in Montana, and Nicole can't drive straight. She genuinely changes lanes 2 or 3 times, going from the right side of the road to the left, then back to the right, then just driving down the middle. There's a loading screen which is only shown here. I believe this is the only unique loading screen in the entire game. Looks like it was ripped straight from Far Cry 5. A better game that was also set in Montana. Fun fact, the sensitivity, despite me having it maxed out and having an insane DPI on my mouse, is really fucking slow. The movement is really fucking slow. This whole game is really fucking slow. Anyway, Nicole is at the hotel and has to begin her inspection of everything while waiting for the attorney. The voicemail explains a few important things. At some point, someone called 911, but didn't say anything. Leonard wasn't paying his phone bill, so the hotel doesn't have any connection to the outside by phone, and somehow the attorney made a call to the voicemail. Unless he recorded it while in the building, which doesn't make too much sense. Now Nicole must begin her inspection while waiting for Jenkins to show up. Spoiler alert, he doesn't, thanks to the snow. Now is probably a good time to mention this, but I randomly kept having weird frame rate issues in the exact same spots, notably on the stairs. I think this may be related to the game loading and unloading rooms, but I can't make sense of it, since a week before recording I played through Dead Island 2 with little to no problems, despite it being newer and bigger and much more intensive than the suicide of Rachel Foster. And while I'm derailing everything, let's talk about Leonard for a bit. Who was he other than a pedophile? Well, he was allegedly a genius astrophysicist who was loved by everyone, including the local reverend. Insert joke here. He was also insanely obsessed with Rachel, as seen in the footage, but hold on. This game takes place 10 years after everything that happened. This is 1993, meaning what happened was 1983 or 84. I'm fairly sure later on it's explained it is 1983. That book says 1990 or 1991. It's kinda hard to tell. But it claims that Leonard saw Rachel. I can't believe the devs don't know their own narrative. Obviously this is foreshadowing something. Thanks to the radio and our new best friend Irving, we learn that we are now trapped in the hotel because of the snowstorm, and also our car keys are missing. Nicole claims they were left on her seat. Irving says it's impossible for anyone to be up there with her due to the isolation. Alright, that is 2 paragraphs in a row where I've implied it. So now to talk about the second part of the story. The Timberline Hotel is haunted. Maybe. The book that I mentioned earlier is the first hint at it, while also hinting at Leonard losing his mind to grief. This gets expanded later on, so I'll talk about it more when we get there. But the car keys, on the other hand, are never mentioned again. They do magically reappear later, but are not mentioned. Throughout the game, there are a bunch of references to ghosts, all of which are talked about in detail, but this is the earliest they are hinted at. The other thing worth mentioning here before I talk about the 9 days at Nicole's, the idea of someone else being in the hotel, explaining the missing keys. This again is sometimes mentioned, but is very much a background story. Until it isn't. Foreshadowing! Now let us get to day 1. I might be misunderstanding something, but based on the conversation at the start of this between Irving and Nicole, Leonard died 5 days before Nicole arrived at the hotel. Depending on his cause of death, which is never stated, he could have known Nicole would be coming there soon, so he intentionally left some things in place for her to find, such as the weird book that implies he can see ghosts. Kind of recontextualizes everything if you look at it that way, doesn't it? Honestly, day one isn't super important. Nicole turns on a furnace she refers to as the old farting ghost, and nothing else happens. This is, however, where I found proof that this was the McGrath's hotel, not the Wilsons, as a pair of snowshoes were given to Ned McGrath in 1886, and Irving mentions the rumours about the Wilsons, McGraths, and Fosters following what happened. Day 2. Since this day starts at the windows, I need to make a note now that you can barely see outside of them. The windows are transparent but blurry, so there could be something really interesting out there, but you would never know because you can't see shit. Nicole and Irving talk. Nicole mentions sleeping perfectly. Irving says he never left the FEMA building. These two have never met. Irving decides to do crossword puzzles, while Nicole interestingly talks about being out like a rock, meaning she doesn't normally sleep like that. This could be me grasping at something that isn't there, but that is kind of weird. She returns to a hotel she hasn't been in since she was a kid and suddenly can sleep abnormally. This isn't the last weird Nicole sleep thing, but they're all played off as just a weird thing and not part of a bigger picture for the most part. I haven't been drawing attention to it, but Nicole has been talking very positively about Leonard. I feel like if I pointed it out every time, it would get very repetitive. So assume if I don't mention Leonard, he's being talked about as a great person. Now Nicole is on the way to check the fridge, because she is so hungry she could eat a horse. It's a shame that until 2007, when horse slaughtering for meat was outlawed, that most horse meat was exported out of the United States into Europe, Canada, and Mexico. You can't fucking complain you haven't learned anything from this video now. The fridge was empty, so Nicole checks the freezer, and the door slams shut, jump scaring me. Door is now stuck and Irving isn't replying. And this is where the game ends. Nicole dies in the freezer. Nobody ever finds her. In all seriousness, this adds to the ghost or intruder narratives. Or at least it would if Irving doesn't say the freezer door is broken when Nicole gets out. I need to talk about this now because it will keep happening. Game sets up a narrative point, does something to add to that point, has something happen that ends with the player thinking that the second thing is unrelated from the narrative point. In this case, there being a ghost or second person in the hotel. Nicole then getting trapped in the freezer with the door slamming and her struggling to open it. Only for Irving to go, oh yeah, the door's broken. Either have the Irving line before she enters the freezer, or have him be confused about the door slamming and getting stuck. Or, even crazier idea, don't have this happen here. There are that many doors that are open throughout the hotel, including one near Nicole's room, that could have slammed shut at some point, leading to the player wanting to investigate it. While eating her beans, Nicole is told by Irving that Jenkins crashed his car into a ditch, so he won't be arriving anytime soon, and to go up to the top floor and look at the sealed off wing of the hotel and the water damage. The West Wing, according to Irving, was being renovated by Leonard, but he didn't get the loan, so it was just abandoned. Nicole says his man cave is in the attic, which is only accessible from the West Wing, and she had tried to forget about that room. Foreshadowing. And now Nicole has become my inner monologue. She begins questioning how Irving can know literally everything that he does about the hotel. Well, he works for FEMA and has taken supplies up there every month since he started working there. Makes perfect sense. Thank you, Irving. Oh, a phone call. So nice of whoever it is to call. Wait, go back to earlier in the script. Leonard wasn't paying his phone bill, so the hotel doesn't have any connection to the outside by phone. How is there a phone call to the hotel? The phone lines were cut. This isn't possible. I'm going to let the audio from the phone call just play.
Yeah. Hello? Who is this? Who the hell are you?
Rachel is still there. Don't sell the hotel.
Is this a joke? Who is this?
Don't do anything stupid.
What, you think you can call my house and threaten me? Come tell me to my face, asshole!
Rachel is still there. Welcome to our brand new plot point. Rachel didn't kill herself. This will be fleshed out in a couple days, but I wanted to mention it now simply because I mentioned the Ghost and Intruder plots earlier and felt like I should continue mentioning things as they happen. or just screaming foreshadowing. Nicole calls Irving, and Irving says a very interesting line, which I will just let play.
Around these parts, time passes in a different way. Some stories seem like they've been forgotten, but actually they just sink down.
Sink down?
Like tea leaves in a cup.
I think I get it, almost.
That girl's death. Rachel. It was the result of painful events, and now it's someone's obsession.
It's kind of funny. I'm only making this video because this game has been in the back of my mind for literal years. And now Irving says that. Weird. Day 3 is here, everyone. Surely there aren't many more. Nicole once again mentions having a great sleep. It is really weird how this is heavily focused on. She also mentions a dream that might have been about Leonard. We'll come back to this, trust me. Day 3's challenge is turning on the generator while the power is going out. There is a door in the garage to access it, but it is stuck, meaning Nicole has to use the crawl spaces to get down there. This is while using a Polaroid camera to light her way. All of this while talking about the person who left a dildo at the hotel one year. I am not joking. I'm not even going to play the audio of it, because fuck you. I just want to say I really like this section. The sections that take place at night are really good, because it just feels uneasy. There are some other sections where I think their goal was to make you nervous, but they just don't succeed in my opinion, because they build up to the horror, but then don't do anything with it. Once Nicole reaches the crawl space, she gets a brand new stress toy, flashlight. During my first playthrough 4 years ago, I'm fairly sure at times I would just spam it for fun. I have no idea why, but I did. I know I'm skipping day 3 a bunch, but like, it isn't a narrative heavy day. At least not until Nicole reaches the generator. She flips it on, and then finds some lipstick. Yes, this is a whole thing. Hotel was shut down 4 years prior to the game, and Nicole has found a lipstick from a brand that was discontinued 9 years prior to the game in a perfect condition. Now, I know nothing about lipstick, but Nicole says it is perfect and could be used right now if she wanted to. This is apparently not normal, as it should have dried out. So if the hotel stopped being used as a hotel 4 years earlier, where did the lipstick that was popular amongst teenagers come from? And how did it not go bad at any point? Day 4 is going to be a little different. You see, day 4 is the big conspiracy day. Everything weird I have pointed out previously is now going to be explained by the game. What I'm going to do is have Nicole talk about each thing, then I will chime in, and so on until this day is done. Basically, Nicole will talk about weird thing A, I will talk about A, Nicole will talk about B, I will talk about B, and so on until done. Then I'll do a day wrap up seeing where we are at with the plot currently.
You know, I can't stop thinking about Rachel's father.
Reverend Foster. He was a very strict man. Harsh, even for pastor standards.
He and Leonard spent hours debating the nature of reality, the universe, and God.
Well, opposites often attract.
Do you ever see him?
Rarely. He gives a service once in a while.
Back in the day, I thought he was a kind of reptilian with a human skin suit.
His daughter's death destroyed his ego. His faith made him even more cynical and lonely than he already was.
I can remember him demanding total perfection from Rachel. That was insane.
You don't think he could have harmed his daughter?
Hey, no. But even Reverend Foster is a player we shouldn't underestimate in this story. Just saying.
Right.
Sometimes Pastor, sometimes Reverend Foster is not important. I hate to spoil it immediately, but he's a background character. He's only mentioned here because he's Rachel's father and expected perfection out of her.
Remember the lipstick I found downstairs?
Yep, you made a big deal about it.
It doesn't smell.
Should it?
After they've been open for a while, lipsticks smell really bad.
Maybe there's been other women. I mean...
From what I gather, Leonard was a sort of recluse. And don't forget, the lipstick is really old.
Could the cold have preserved it?
Possibly.
Anything else?
According to a Reddit thread I found, there actually isn't a definitive timeline on when lipsticks go bad. Some were saying you should throw them out after 2 years because they are likely bad. Others were saying their lipstick still smells the same as when they bought it 7 years prior. So maybe the lipstick means nothing, but obviously the main point isn't that it smells fine. It is that it smells fine and isn't dried out. Meaning someone held on to a 10-year-old lipstick without opening or using it.
Hey, I found a book in Leonard's Things. It's a collection of poetry, but it's got notes written in it.
Did your father write them? What do they say?
Dates, notes, thoughts. Listen to this. Today I saw Rachel. Or Rachel is sad. Or Rachel says she feels alone.
He kept a diary about her.
But the book was printed 8 years after Rachel's death.
Do you mean it's like he was talking with Rachel after she died?
As if he saw her.
Well, I mean, there must be an explanation.
Of course, there's an explanation for everything, and we've got to find it.
I mentioned the book earlier with the notes in it. It doesn't exactly scream ghost, and more his grief and isolation causing him to hallucinate. Remember, not only did his child girlfriend die, but his wife and daughter both left him. It isn't impossible that he started seeing things.
In this article from a couple years back, there's a statement by some girl who affirms she saw Rachel in a hallway at the Timberline.
Who's this girl?
A classmate, Glenda Ferguson. I tore out the page. I think the magazine was MT Woman.
Nicole. That's a gossip magazine. They would sell their mother, even their cousins and nephews, just for a bunch of new readers.
I know, it's not a very reliable source.
Rachel fell 90 feet into a void. She can't be alive.
I thought I was the skeptical one here.
Gossip magazine. Do I need to say more? This is the one that adds to the Rachel is alive theory, with a former classmate claiming they saw her. Ultimately, there isn't really anything specifically from the magazine, but let's look at some other things that kind of tie in with this. The phone call mentioned she was still here, which could mean ghost, or that she's still alive and living in the hotel, which can kind of explain the lipstick, but not really, the freezer incident, and the implication that someone else is in the hotel. But at the same time, there's yet to be any real evidence that someone other than Nicole is actually there.
So, listen to this. Graphologists doubt the authenticity of the suicide note left by the girl.
Who said that?
An investigative journalist. The article came out a year after her death.
You think it's a setup?
Perhaps.
Okay, well, I'll hear you out.
This is the first time murder has been brought up. So far we have suicide, fake death, and murder. At this point, there's nothing really leading to murder. If we stretch it, then maybe we can find something, but as it stands, it currently doesn't fit anywhere.
I found a copy of the local paper, dated December 29th, 1981, the day that the body was discovered. According to the forensics report, Rachel had been dead for days. She was 9 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, that was the official version.
Rachel was 9 weeks pregnant. This now opens up murder as an option. The whole pregnancy section was very short because I need to connect it to everything else. So this is where we currently are in terms of Rachel's death. If Rachel took her own life, it was potentially due to her pregnancy. With her father being part of the church, he could have disowned her for her sins, and she felt suicide was her only real option. The faked death story falls apart when you realise they literally found her dead body, and I assume identified the body as Rachel. The sheer number of people that would have had to have been involved to fake her death is just insane for it to have been reasonable. And that leaves murder. Let's go back to the beginning of the game. Nicole is told to take some of the money for the hotel and put it towards her university fees, and give the rest to the Fosters to end this story. What if Ms. Wilson killed her because she was pregnant? What if Leonard killed her because she was pregnant? Remember, he got a 16-year-old pregnant. That could have destroyed his reputation if that became public knowledge. And what if Reverend Herring killed her because plot twist? We can now say that Rachel is almost definitely actually dead. which means if she's in the hotel, it is her ghost. Which now raises a new topic. Where did Rachel die? Based on the map that is on screen, Rachel died miles away from the hotel. But typically ghosts haunt the place they died, so did she actually die in the hotel? Or is there no ghost at all? We'll circle back to this eventually. Day 5. This is likely the dream from earlier. Nicole walks towards a retainer, Flair talking to Leonard, except Leonard is talking to Rachel. That's all. This makes me feel uneasy. Can someone please call this guy a piece of shit already?
Hey, cutie pie. How are you?
Daddy? Daddy, is that you? Where are you? I can't see you.
You came back in the end. It's like the inescapability of a celestial body's revolution. We can't help but follow certain stars' brightness, even if those stars have died millions of years ago.
Daddy, I missed you so much.
Their light is alive, and it reaches us. And those stars are alive and dead at the same time.
What are you trying to say? I don't understand. I can't see you, Daddy.
Listen, sweet pea. My sweetheart. Listen to my voice. It's important.
I can't see you. Where are you? Where are you?
You know how much I love you.
I know, Daddy. I've always known it. I love you too. Say it again, please.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Rachel, 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 Rachel.
Day 6. No, seriously, that was all of 5. I am not joking. Today is the ghost day. Some ghost hunters stayed in the hotel after Rachel's death. The audio equipment of the ghost hunters is fucking up. They see something bright in their camera. Their room was sealed. Nicole goes to investigate. You should have seen this coming. After Nicole grabs a screwdriver to open the door, we get the first case of a strange chime noise. This is followed up later, but once again mentioning it when it appears. Nicole's brand new parabolic microphone that has been sitting in a sealed room for some time will be helpful in finding the source of it. I will let the tape play in full for you, so enjoy it. I don't know why the tape doesn't have audio. I assume bug. But anyway, the important things from the tape are Leonard looks insane according to the ghost hunters. They can hear a female voice, they see a white light, they can't find their car keys, and the door magically slams shut at the end. Leonard looking insane fits with everything I've said, both about Rachel being murdered and killing herself. His guilt was eating away at him, so he would definitely not look great. The female voice fits the idea that Rachel's ghost is haunting the place, and the white light is potentially her. The missing keys are, to me, the most interesting thing, since we still haven't heard a thing about Nicole's keys that went missing when she first arrived at the hotel. At this point, it is safe to say that either Rachel is haunting the hotel and likes to steal keys, or someone is trying to scare people away from the hotel and is using a fake ghost to do that. Day 7. Merry Christmas. Irving is slowly becoming very creepy. Interesting that he mentions a 12-year-old. Definitely not going to come back to this. He says goodbye to someone who works with him called Miss Flattery, who sounds a lot like a guy doing a bad impersonation of a female voice.
You have a good night too, Miss Flattery. Merry Christmas.
Good night, hon!
I completely forgot this whole thing gets worse. Nicole talks about an old Christmas, and I'm just gonna let her say it.
Then it all ended. Christmas of '80. Me and my mom were at my aunt's house in Billings, and Leonard was here on his own. While I was pretending that I liked my aunt's sweater, he and she were...
Nicole.
They...
Hey.
And a year later, she killed herself. And what she was carrying, too.
Don't be like that.
There you have it. These are my memories.
Rachel was 13. Age of consent in Montana is 16. In Italy, where the devs are from, it is 14. There is now zero fucking excuse. Leonard is a pedophile. Every character that talks positively about him is a piece of shit. The articles that the devs have quotes from on their store page claiming this game handles sensitive topics respectfully in the nicest way possible are full of shit. There is no world where this can be fucking defended. Fucking hell. Hold on, I wrote that before listening to the next line. The line says 80, so 1980. Then mentions a year later she killed herself, so 81. The game takes place in 1993. That is 12 years, despite it being a decade between Rachel's death and the game. What is going on here? The store page says 10 years. I'm gonna go with the logic of the first line being correct and the a year later just being wrong, entirely because I am not dealing with paradoxes. And now back to the chimes. Irving decides now is a great time to ask Nicole on a date for some reason. Interestingly, the microphone keeps picking up a male whispering, which definitely isn't Rachel. The chimes are from the chandeliers in the ballroom that were all taken down, except the sound wasn't coming from them. Instead, it was coming from a picture of the ballroom. Sure, why not? The Stanley Hotel was actually in Montana in this universe. Day 8. Okay, this is actually Christmas. Nicole wakes up in the church. This is the first time she's actually shown waking up from a sleep. When she gets back to her room and grabs her stuff, she reveals that as a kid she would sleepwalk, but hasn't done that since she moved away from the hotel. Once again, weird sleep oddities with Nicole. I think this is the last time though, and they aren't brought up again. So clearly there is something with the hotel that affects how Nicole sleeps, but nothing is explained. With her inventory in hand, she returns to the church to try and find out why she sleepwalked there, only to get distracted and start looking for decorations. The riddle leading to the decorations has a plaque showing it, which strangely uses the same structure as the way Nicole says it. This is not brought up at any point. This by sheer luck leads Nicole, now being referred to as Nikki by Irving, to a strange room decorated to be a child's room. That child is Rachel. Rachel had dyslexia. Leonard was giving her lessons. So currently, Leonard is a pedophile and committed statutory rape. But he's such a nice guy. Also, her retainer case is there, but not her retainer. Her retainer is potentially being used, so maybe she fakes her death. In case you can't tell, I'm struggling at this point. We're at 2 days in a row where Leonard has been described as a massive fucking piece of shit and just no one seems to care. I mentioned it yesterday, but on the store page and currently on screen, there is a quote that says the game handles sensitive topics really well. It doesn't, because if it did, then Nicole's problem with Leonard would not be he cheated on my mum, it would be he fucked a girl who was my age and got her pregnant. I guess I should get back to the story now, shouldn't I? We're almost done, thankfully. In the room is a key to a music box in Leonard's room containing a medal that Nicole won in hockey on the night of Rachel's death. A breadcrumb, clearly showing that something more happened that night. But this raises a question. How would Nicole have known of anything? She was playing hockey. That was also the night where the family fell apart, so it's safe to assume Ms. Wilson learned about what her husband was doing and ended it after Rachel disappeared. Day 9, dawn of the final day. This is the longest day, but I'll shorten it a lot, because it is an insane amount of talking from Irving. Chekhov's room now comes into play. Nicole's goal is to enter the West Wing and go to the attic to solve this mystery. Nicole needs to find a key, and suddenly remembers the only place she hasn't looked is a storeroom above reception, which up until today has been blocked by a number of boxes. Whether Nicole moved them is never explained. In this room, mannequins. 2 are important. One is lying down holding a baby, the other is above it holding Nicole's hockey stick. Rachel was murdered using Nicole's hockey stick. Let's detour for a second. We have 2 suspects now that we know it was murder. Leonard and Ms. Wilson. They basically have the same motive, the pregnancy. I'm just going to spoil it. Ms. Wilson killed Rachel. A grown woman in her 40s or 50s murdered a 16-year-old who had been groomed by her husband because she got pregnant by her husband. The only good person in this story was murdered for being abused by someone she trusted. Irving now starts acting weird, and oh my god, he was in the hotel the entire time. And he's Rachel's younger brother, and was working with Leonard to piece together what happened, maybe? I actually don't know if Leonard knew his ex-wife killed Rachel. Rather than forcing you to listen to Irving talk, I'm going to talk about the pictures on the wall. On the walls, other than some really heavy stalker stuff of Nicole, are ghost sightings. Bright white figures near and in the hotel. The ghost hunters saw this same thing. There was a ghost. There was someone else in the hotel. I'll talk about this more after I've finished talking about the story, but just know this annoys me. In a dark room are photos of Nicole's car, the Rachel replica room, and some other rooms that don't really matter or aren't easy to figure out where they are. Irving has been watching Nicole this entire time. Now, welcome to the attic. This is likely where Leonard got Rachel pregnant. This is where Leonard helped Rachel with her dyslexia. And on the chessboard is the key to Miss Wilson's car, which has been sat in the garage the entire time. But first, movie night. Leonard made a movie for his daughter basically saying, great work for solving this, and Irving knew you could do it. And they could all hear the ghost, and his big theory is that love can solve everything, which is why he never went to prison. And now, finally, the ghost reveals herself to Nicole, writing on the chalkboard, murderer, which makes no fucking sense. 1, there was no floating chalk. 2, Nicole wasn't the murderer, Rachel. Irving now says that Leonard's soul was big enough to love both Nicole and Rachel. Did Leonard also fuck his daughter? Nicole goes to her mother's car and finds a bloody blanket. I haven't mentioned the to-do list before, but now Nicole is being driven insane, like her father and Irving. She washes the blanket and finds the missing retainer. Nicole saw her mother hiding the body of Rachel in the car. During the hockey game, her mother disappeared for a while to dump the body and stage a suicide. Irving didn't know who killed his sister, claiming Rachel had been stopping him from doing that. And Irving's story ends here, with him walking out into the cold, killing himself. The screen goes black. When it comes back, Nicole is in her car, holding Rachel's retainer, with a hose going from the exhaust into the car. Jenkins calls and Nicole says she doesn't want to sell the hotel. The player is given one option: turn the car on. Once the car is on, you can leave Nicole to die. Or, the canonical ending, to turn it off. Nicole says she will bring the Timberline back, and the game ends. That last day was a lot. hell, the last 3 days were a lot. So let's shift focus for a second to a very different game that actually has a lot of similar details. The Paynes Creek Killings. Going to be completely honest, I don't like the Paynes Creek Killings. I think it is worse than Rachel Foster, but it does act as an interesting companion to this game. Both surround death, have elements of Christianity, ghosts, and someone else is there. The two main comparisons I want to make are about the ghosts and the other person. I'll start with the much shorter, that being the ghosts. In Rachel Foster, the story of there being a ghost is constantly contradicted. Sometimes it's ghosts, other times it's an intruder, and other times it is paranoia, until right at the end it is revealed the ghost of Rachel is in the hotel. In the Paynes Creek Killings, however, you can see the ghost almost immediately by entering a house near where you enter the town. Later you find photos showing the ghost in a number of locations that you can cross-reference with in-game areas. And then at the end of the game, the ghost saves you from the stranger. Whereas one goes back and forth on whether there is a ghost, the other shows you the ghost a number of times, while having the idea of a ghost in the town exist from the very beginning. Rachel Foster first points directly to ghosts on day 4, with everything prior more aiming towards human intervention. The ghost in Paynes Creek Killings requires you to walk right when entering the town, grab a journal in a house, and then leave and look forward. That is all. Interestingly, the stranger story was handled better by Rachel Foster. As a reminder, Nicole's keys go missing immediately, the strange phone call happens to a hotel with no phone lines, and the lipstick is found perfectly intact when it shouldn't be, all within 3 days of Nicole arriving at the hotel. In Paynes Creek Killings, the only hint from what I can recall that someone else might be in the town is all the doors being locked after a private investigator had gone through, and the investigator being missing. Paynes Creek Killings, according to my playtime, is about 6 hours long. Rachel Foster is about 2 to 3. In roughly half the time, Rachel Foster hinted at one of their twists a lot more. But that now brings me to an important point. The suicide of Rachel Foster sets up so many twists, with half of them not really meaning anything. What is the significance of Rachel's room? Well, it's to hint that at the Rachel is Alive plotline, but her dead body was found and identified. There is a whole line I didn't mention earlier of Nicole trying to make sense of the room, but even she says she's getting too conspiratorial. So what was the point of the room? Who actually made the room, and why? Logically it was Leonard, but why go and replicate your victim's room? Especially since she was allegedly 16, but the room looks like a 6-year-old's room? How about the fact that everyone seems okay with Rachel's age? I don't think I have emphasized it enough, but unless something about the line to do with Christmas is wrong, Rachel was 13 when it became extremely illegal. Potentially even younger. But nobody really mentions the age part. The only time it is somewhat relevant is right after the discovery of the room and right before opening the music box, where Nicole yells at Irving, but she mentions the cheating before the age, showing that the cheating was worse than her dad being a pedophile. How about the random mentions of Reverend Foster during day 4? Why even bring him up if it isn't going to lead to literally anything? Rachel Foster was nothing more than a background character who happened to be in the hotel the night Rachel was killed. 101 Games is an Italian dev team. I'm not Italian, I'm Australian. So I called upon an Italian to help me understand something. Is this a normal thing in Italian media? The idea of a bunch of narrative threads just appearing never to be resolved, or twists being set up then ignored, or just deciding to throw out twists on top of twists. And he didn't really know. But by sheer coincidence, his sister literally analyzes Italian media. And to paraphrase her response, this isn't common there. But more importantly, in something I didn't bring up in my question, she talks about shades of grey in characters. I actually hadn't thought about this when going through the game, but it is interesting how the game kind of attempts this. But it fails in every single way. Leonard, for example, is loved by the community, and everyone talks positively about him. He raped a 13-year-old. Ms. Wilson, a good Christian woman who was cheated on by her pedophile husband, murdered the underage girl. Irving spends the entire game borderline torturing Nicole and lying to her. But it's okay, because now Nicole knows her dead mother killed Rachel. And Nicole, other than the random anti-abortion line which could come from Italian beliefs, or just an attempt at talking about American issues in the 1980s and 90s, is kinda bitchy, but isn't actually shown to be a bad person. She's actually the closest to good of the characters we meet more, I guess is the best way to put it. It is kind of interesting how in a game that essentially only has 4 characters, Rachel not included since she's not a real character, only one doesn't do anything that borders on evil. And then if we do include Rachel, she's purely a victim. A 13-year-old who was bullied for something she couldn't control finds comfort in the adult who is helping her through her dyslexia, who grooms her, then gets her pregnant before she's killed by a different adult, all while underage. I had another question for my friend. Specifically if Italians hate pedophiles as much as the rest of the world, and according to him, they absolutely do. So if that is the case, how does the plot of this game only talk positively about the pedophile? Was it a weird issue with the translation, or was this the intention of the devs? I don't think this game defends pedophilia, but it definitely doesn't condemn it. This game is anti-cheating on your partner. Let's now turn our focus back to the weird unanswered plot points. Why was Nicole sleeping easier and sleepwalking again? The sleepwalking might actually have an answer, weirdly. If Nicole is deeply sleeping, it isn't unreasonable that Irving could carry her into the church if he is careful enough. It's not super likely, but it does give an explanation. The alternative is weird Rachel ghost magic, but that still leaves the weird sleeping habits. Nicole makes a big deal of how well she is sleeping even before eating anything. So it is unlikely the food had been drugged. So what's causing it? Ghost magic? Comfort in the hotel? We may never actually have an answer to this because the game doesn't give anything. Why does the sign leading to Rachel's room match the subtitles? The fact that they are identical when realistically the sign should not match, since the subtitles contain all of the pauses in Nicole's speaking. This implies that the entire sleepwalking section isn't real, especially when including the glowing butterfly that I didn't mention earlier. So does Day 8 even happen? But, well, considering Day 9's opening conversation references the end of Day 8, it has to have happened. Is it trying to imply Nicole's going crazy? That seems like the most likely option, but it still isn't perfect, since her insanity only really becomes a thing at the end of Day 9 with little to no build-up. Originally, this was going to be where the video ended. I would have wrapped up everything, repeated everything I had already said, but I thought about something, and I have a question. A question that changes the context of the entire game. What if Rachel wasn't originally written to be a minor? Hear me out here, because this will make sense by the time I am finished. Let's say originally Rachel was meant to be 18 years old. What exactly needs to be changed in the game for her to now be 16? Well, they only mention Leonard fucking a child once or twice, so that's easy enough to change. Rachel's room already doesn't fit a 16-year-old, so that doesn't really need to be changed. The retainer doesn't need to be changed. Irving doesn't suddenly need to be a lot older. Nicole can easily be anywhere from 15 to 18 at the time of the events. Nothing serious needs to be changed. Even Leonard's tutoring can make sense, since the story is bullying. That doesn't need to be tweaked at all. So why is she 16 instead of 18 plus? I have a theory. If nothing vital to the story gets changed by her being 16 or 18 or 21, what if her age wasn't originally important? What if, hypothetically, her age wasn't considered for some time during development? Allow me to explain the backstory of the game, but if we pretend Rachel was an adult. Leonard is tutoring Rachel, who is struggling in college due to her dyslexia, which leads to the two having an affair. Ms. Wilson finds out about the affair and kills Rachel, ultimately destroying two families and setting everything into motion for Nicole to return years later and learn more about the affair. Suddenly, Leonard isn't pure evil, but painted as a saint. He's a good guy who cheated on his wife. Rachel is less of a victim since she isn't a child, and Ms. Wilson didn't murder a child. This now raises the question of how is the game so close to making sense? Well, here's where my theory comes in. What if, during the early stage of development, the idea for the story was man cheats on his wife, wife kills mistress, murder is made to look like a suicide? Basic story, it fits the basic idea of the game, and fits the idea that Rachel wouldn't have been a child. Then at some point they wanted Nicole to be the same age, and a student. So they had someone look up the age of consent in Montana, which is 16, but didn't look further than that, and then the writers fucked it up by mentioning Christmas of 1980, making Rachel 13 when it started. Looking at the entire game, Rachel's age doesn't matter. It's just sort of there. Every time Leonard would be called a pedophile, everyone emphasizes the cheating, not the fucking a child. The only time Nicole makes even a half reference to Leonard being a pedophile, she mentions the cheating first. Rachel being 16 isn't important to the narrative the devs wanted to tell, yet it overshadows their story of cheating and revenge and turns it into a story of pedophilia and pedicide. So do the devs defend pedophilia? No, because Rachel, being a child, seemingly wasn't intended and was something they stumbled into during development. The game is about a pedophile being painted as a perfect person, but only because he wasn't meant to be a pedophile. He was meant to have cheated on his wife and nothing more. The game is flawed, seemingly by accident. I can only assume that a lot of the weirdness in the game was because it came from the same hypothetical draft where Rachel was an adult. The fake death plotline makes a little more sense if Rachel isn't a child, for example. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. Thanks for sitting through me rambling about a game you've never heard of. Now fuck off. At least, that is what I would have said if I were actually done. You see, this video isn't to commemorate 4 years since my original video. In mid-October, 101 Games announced a sequel to the suicide of Rachel Foster, The Fading of Nicole Wilson. This time, focusing on a girl named Amy, who gets a ghost hunting job at the Timberline Hotel. Based on the description on Steam, this one's going to focus more on horror with puzzle solving, but that's not the important part. The important part is, according to the description, 10 years after Nicole said she would bring the Timberline back to its former glory, it remains abandoned, meaning she lied to the ghosts. The store page also mentions something more dangerous than the supernatural, and a truth hidden in the hotel's history that has never been told before. So it's a cult, right? Like, if it's something more dangerous than the supernatural, it has to be people trying to cover something up. And the truth would have to be something involving the McGraths or Wilsons, so potentially some sort of cult. I have a weird feeling that they're going to try and retcon either the murder of Rachel or the abuse of Rachel to be somehow part of a cult trying to summon a god of some description. It would in part explain Rachel's ghost being happy to seemingly try and kill Nicole, since this is a thing that some types of ghosts do in various stories. That would also feel like a massive twist just for the hell of it, with no build-up. I imagine a large part of the game will also somehow try to retcon Rachel's age and make her 19 or early 20s, simply because they don't want to talk about pedophilia and just massively fucked up with the first game. With all that said, I have no interest in playing The Fading of Nicole Wilson when it comes out. Maybe I'll play it at some point as an anniversary for this video, but as it stands, I need to get away from the suicide of Rachel Foster for as long as possible. I'll have another video out either by the end of this year or the first week of January. It'll be a lot more positive than this, trust me on that. Now you can fuck off.